Ryan Miller had always been proud of his work ethic and his dedication to his wife, Olivia. After completing his electrician apprenticeship, he quickly earned the reputation as one of the most dependable employees at Greenfield Electric. Despite long hours on the job, he always made time for Olivia. Their 6-year marriage seemed rock solid, but lately, Ryan had begun to notice small, unsettling changes in Olivia's behavior. Olivia, a professor of psychology, had always been a structured and ambitious woman. When she received an invitation to attend a conference in Washington, she was eager to go. Ryan offered to accompany her, but she insisted on going alone, citing the importance of the conference. She reminded him of their upcoming holiday plans, which seemed like a good excuse for him to stay behind. Ryan reluctantly agreed, though he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The day Ryan returned home, he was exhausted from a long day of work. As he stepped inside, the house felt strangely empty. Olivia had left for the conference earlier in the day, and Ryan was left with his thoughts. There was no message from her to let him know she had arrived safely, which was unusual. He decided to call her. Ryan's phone rang twice before Olivia picked up. Her cheerful voice on the other end immediately eased his concerns, but something about her tone struck him as off. "I was just about to call you, Ryan. You must be reading my mind," she said, her voice light but with an edge he couldn't ignore. He could hear the faint sound of voices in the background, distant but unmistakable, likely from the seminar. "I always do, don't I?" he joked, trying to lighten the mood. He asked her about the trip, how the conference had gone. Her answer seemed typical. Smooth flight, little traffic, and easy check-in. But then, there was something that bothered him. "I found the hotel without trouble, thanks to the directions you printed out." "It was a smooth ride," Olivia said, her voice warmer now. "You know, I even thought about asking my colleague Ethan if he wanted to join me, but I didn't." Ryan tried to brush it off, but the mention of Ethan left a strange pit in his stomach. Olivia had always insisted on handling her professional matters independently, so why was she bringing him up now? "No, I didn't ask," Ryan said, his voice calm. "But hey, I'm sure you'll be too busy to miss me anyway." Ryan tried to joke it off, but Olivia's reaction made him pause. Her laughter sounded forced. I'll be fine. Don't worry about me. Just stay home. Relax. I've got this under control." Her insistence on being alone more than usual made Ryan uneasy. He could feel it, that nagging suspicion that something was different. But instead of pushing further, he decided to take the conversation back to safe ground. "Anything you need, just let me know. I'm not doing much myself," he said, trying to sound casual. "I've got a million things to handle here, but we'll catch up soon," Olivia replied. "Don't forget our plans for next month. I'll be back on Saturday evening for dinner." She hung up quickly, as though eager to be done with the call, and left Ryan staring at the phone, his mind racing. Ryan sat in the kitchen after the call, the silence pressing in around him. It had been a long day at work, and he was still physically exhausted. His mind, however, was wide awake. Something about Olivia's behavior unsettled him. It wasn't the first time he had felt this way. Over the past few months, he had noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. Moments where she seemed distant or overly defensive, almost as if she was hiding something from him. Shaking off the feeling, Ryan decided to relax and ordered some pizza for dinner. With the prospect of food on the way, he headed upstairs to take a quick shower and change into something more comfortable. As the warm water ran over his tired muscles, he tried to clear his mind, but the thoughts of Olivia kept creeping back in. Why had she insisted on going to the conference alone? Why did she sound so guarded when they spoke? The question swirled in his mind like a storm that wouldn't settle. He had never been the type to jump to conclusions, but this time his gut was telling him something wasn't right. He dried off quickly and threw on an old t-shirt and jeans before heading back downstairs. The pizza was due to arrive in about 30 minutes, so he settled at the kitchen table with a beer, trying to distract himself from his thoughts. He flipped through the channels on TV absent-mindedly, but nothing caught his attention. It wasn't until he glanced at the calendar on the wall that he remembered. Their spring break vacation was just around the corner. The tickets to their planned trip were sitting on the sideboard in the hallway, a constant reminder of the future they had envisioned together. But now, that future didn't feel so certain. The image of Olivia's phone call lingered in his mind. Her quick responses. The way she had sounded a little too happy to be away from him. It didn't sit right with him. He had no reason to doubt her, but the more he thought about it, the more his suspicions grew. As he stood up to grab another beer, his eyes caught something in the bedroom that made his heart skip a beat. Olivia's purse was sitting on the dresser, slightly ajar. He had never gone through her things. Trust was important in their marriage, and he had always respected that. But tonight, something inside him urged him to take a look. Maybe it was the accumulation of the past few months, or maybe it was just the nagging voice in his head that wouldn't let him rest. Whatever it was, it pushed him forward. Ryan walked over to the dresser and, almost reluctantly, peered inside her purse. It was mostly filled with papers, a few receipts, and a couple of lipsticks. But there, tucked underneath a stack of brochures for the conference, was something that caught his eye. A small, folded note. His heart raced as he picked it up, his fingers trembling. Unfolding it carefully, he read the words written in Olivia's neat handwriting. "I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. I can't stop thinking about you." His breath caught in his throat. The note was personal. And the words? They left no doubt in his mind that Olivia was involved with someone else. He had been right. His suspicions had been justified. But now the truth hit him harder than anything he had ever felt. She wasn't just distant. She was hiding an affair. His thoughts spun out of control. He thought about the man who had been on her mind. Someone she couldn't stop thinking about. Who was this person? And why hadn't Olivia mentioned him before? The feeling of betrayal hit him like a punch to the stomach. How had he been so blind? He needed answers. He needed to confront Olivia, but first, he had to know everything, and that meant digging deeper. Ryan's heart raced as he clutched the note, its edges crinkling in his clenched fist. The words seemed to blur in his mind as his thoughts spiraled out of control. "I can't stop thinking about you," Olivia had written. Who was this person? And why was she hiding it from him? His entire world felt like it was crumbling in that moment. The wife he had loved and trusted for 6 years was now a stranger to him. He felt a strange mix of disbelief and anger building up inside him. He had always trusted Olivia, She had been the center of his world, and he had believed in their relationship more than anything. To think that she could be seeing someone else, hiding it so well, shattered him. The thought that she had been lying to him for so long gnawed at him, eating away at the foundation of everything they had built together. With the note still in his hand, Ryan paced the room, trying to gather his thoughts. He needed to confront her, but part of him was terrified of what he might find. What if the truth was worse than he imagined? Could he handle it? In a daze, he walked over to the closet, hoping to find something that could explain her behavior. There, buried in the back of her closet, was a small, dark leather bag that he had never seen before. The bag was too small to be for work, too sleek and polished to be for anything ordinary. His pulse quickened as he unzipped it. Inside, there was a folded photograph. A picture of Olivia and a man Ryan didn't recognize, taken at what looked like a fancy restaurant. Olivia was smiling, her arm draped around the man's shoulder, and his hand was placed possessively on her waist. Ryan's stomach churned as he looked at the photo. It was clear that Olivia and this man were far too comfortable with each other for it to be just a friendly interaction. The way they were looking at each other, it was too intimate, too personal. Ryan felt his fists clench, his body vibrating with a mixture of shock and anger. He didn't know who this man was, but that didn't matter. The betrayal was real, and it was happening right in front of him. With trembling hands, he placed the photo back into the bag and zipped it shut. His mind raced. Who was this man? And why hadn't Olivia ever mentioned him? He thought about the conference. Olivia had been adamant that she go alone, almost as if she wanted to distance herself from him. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to come together in a way he hadn't expected. She was involved with this man, and it had been going on for a while. The signs had always been there, but he had been too trusting, too blind to see them. Ryan needed answers, but more than that, he needed to confront Olivia. He needed to know how deep this betrayal ran, and what it meant for their future. His mind kept flashing back to the last phone call they had. Her tone, her insistence that he stay home, the way she deflected his questions. The realization hit him hard. She had been keeping secrets from him, hiding something far bigger than just a few small lies. The anger that surged inside him was almost overwhelming. He had been patient, trusting, and loyal to Olivia for so long, and now she had thrown it all away. His thoughts were clouded with confusion and rage. But there was one thing that was clear. He needed to act. Ryan grabbed his phone from the kitchen counter, his fingers almost shaking as he dialed. He needed to know who this man was, and he wasn't going to let Olivia hide behind more lies. He had to find out everything, and he needed it fast. Ryan's mind raced as he sat down at the kitchen table, his phone pressed to his ear. He wasn't sure who he was calling or even what he was hoping to find, but the need to know the truth consumed him. The more he thought about the photo, the note, and Olivia's distant behavior, the more the anger inside him grew. He had to know who this man was. This stranger who had been slipping into his wife's life when he wasn't around. As the phone rang, Ryan's heart pounded in his chest. The weight of the situation was suffocating. He had always trusted Olivia implicitly. He had believed in their marriage, in the promises they had made to each other. Now everything felt like a lie. His mind kept going back to that note. "I can't stop thinking about you." The words echoed in his ears like a haunting refrain. Who was this man? What did Olivia see in him that she couldn't see in Ryan anymore? The phone finally connected, and Ryan's voice cracked slightly as he asked the question that had been burning inside him. "I need to know who Anthony Romano is," Ryan said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Do you have any information on him?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Then a voice responded, "Sure, I can get you the information you need. Just give me a moment." Ryan's palms were sweaty as he leaned back in his chair, waiting for the information to come through. His thoughts raced in a million directions. Anthony Romano. Who was he, and how had he slipped into Olivia's life so seamlessly? He kept picturing the photo, the way Olivia had smiled at him. That wasn't just a casual meeting, it was something much deeper. The connection between them was undeniable, and it stung. The seconds felt like hours before Ryan received the details he was looking for. When the voice came back on the line, it felt like a weight had been lifted, but it was replaced with a new kind of tension. Anthony Romano is a teaching assistant at Olivia's college. He started working with her about 6 months ago. I've got his contact details here. Do you want me to email them to you? Ryan's hands shook as he grabbed a pen, scribbling down the information. His mind was reeling. A teaching assistant. The pieces were falling into place. Ryan recalled Olivia's recent behavior, how she had started mentioning Anthony more and more. He had brushed it off at the time, thinking it was just part of her work life. But now, it all made sense. Anthony was the man who had been slowly infiltrating their life, who had stolen Olivia's attention and affection away from him. "Please send me everything you have," Ryan said, his voice firm, but filled with underlying emotion. "I need to know everything about him." As he hung up the phone, Ryan felt a sickening sense of realization. His wife, the woman he had devoted his life to, had been carrying on an affair right under his nose. The thought of it twisted in his gut. He couldn't believe how easily she had hidden it, how perfectly she had played the role of the loving wife while betraying him in the shadows. The phone buzzed a few moments later, and Ryan opened the email with a sense of dread. There, staring back at him, was Anthony's full name, his contact information, and a few details about his background. Ryan didn't need to know anymore. The man had worked with Olivia for months, had grown close to her, and now Ryan was left picking up the pieces. He sat there in silence for a few minutes, absorbing the information. His mind was numb, but at the same time, a surge of clarity hit him. He knew what he had to do. The truth was out, and now he needed to confront Olivia. No more hiding, no more pretending that everything was fine. He had to face her, and he had to do it soon. The door to their future had been opened, and there was no going back. Ryan couldn't sit still. The anger, confusion, and betrayal mixed in a storm inside him. He had the information now. He knew who Anthony Romano was. The pieces were finally falling into place, but the truth was still too much to fully grasp. He had been so trusting, so sure of his marriage, and now everything felt like a lie. His phone buzzed again, pulling him from his spiraling thoughts. It was an email from the private investigator. Attached were the photos Ryan had requested, clear images of Olivia and Anthony together at a cafe. The sight of them sent a wave of nausea through him. It was all real. His worst fears were confirmed. With the photos in hand, Ryan stood up, pacing. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to confront Olivia. But how? What would he even say to her? The thought of facing her, of hearing her excuses, made his blood boil. He took a deep breath and dialed Olivia's number. He needed to hear her voice to see if she would admit the truth. The phone rang, and his heart raced. When she picked up, her tone was casual, almost too casual. "Hey, Ryan, everything okay?" Ryan clenched his fist. "We need to talk." Olivia's voice faltered for a split second before she replied, "Sure. What about?" "I know about you and Anthony," Ryan said, his voice cold and steady. The words hung in the air like a weight, suffocating Ryan. He had said them, but now that the moment had arrived, he felt his chest tighten. Olivia's silence on the other end was deafening. He could hear her breath hitch before she spoke. "Ryan, what do you mean?" Her voice was strained, as though she were trying to hide her shock, but Ryan could tell something had shifted. The false calm in her voice only made him more certain of the truth. "You don't have to play innocent with me," Ryan said, his voice steady, but the fury bubbling just below the surface. "I found the note you left behind, and the photo, the one with you and him, Anthony. Don't try to deny it." Olivia was quiet for a long time, and for a moment Ryan wondered if she would hang up, but then her voice finally cracked, breaking the tension. "Ryan, it's not what you think." Ryan's pulse quickened. "Really? Because everything I've seen, every little thing you've done, it all adds up. I trusted you, Olivia. I trusted you with everything I had. And this? This is what I get?" His voice wavered with hurt and anger. He had never imagined that this would be his reality. The woman he loved, the woman he thought would stand by him forever, had betrayed him in the most intimate way. The betrayal felt like a wound that would never heal. Olivia's response was filled with desperation. "It's complicated, Ryan. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." Her words were a jumble, rushed, as though she was trying to justify the impossible. "Anthony and I—" She paused, unsure of how to proceed. "I wasn't thinking clearly. I was lonely. You were always working, and I started leaning on him." Ryan felt his heart shatter. Her admission hit him like a physical blow. "So you were lonely?" he asked, his voice low, his anger barely contained. "Is that all it takes for you to betray me, Olivia? Loneliness?" Olivia's voice trembled as she spoke again. "I'm sorry, Ryan. I never wanted to hurt you. I made a mistake." Ryan's mind was racing. He had always believed that their bond was unbreakable, that they were partners in every sense of the word. But in that moment, all of it felt like a lie. The years they had spent together, the plans for their future, it was all shattered. What had started as love had turned into nothing more than betrayal and deception. "Sorry?" Ryan repeated, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. Is that all you have to say? That you're sorry?" There was a long pause, and when Olivia finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost pleading. "I don't know what else to say, Ryan. I messed up. I'm sorry. Please. Can we talk about this when I get back?" Ryan's grip on his phone tightened. He wanted to scream, to let out all the frustration, the hurt, and the anger that had been building inside him. But instead, he simply said, "No. When you get back, we'll talk. But don't expect me to just forget this. I can't." With that, he hung up. His hands were shaking, his mind clouded with a mix of anger and betrayal. Olivia's apology felt hollow, a weak attempt to ease her own guilt a bit child. But it didn't change what had already been done. The damage was done, and nothing she said could erase the pain he felt in that moment. Ryan stood there, his heart aching, and for the first time, he realized that this wasn't just about an affair. It was about the destruction of everything he had ever believed in. Olivia had taken something that could never be repaired, and he wasn't sure if he could ever look at her the same way again. Ryan sat there in silence, staring at his phone, the weight of the conversation still settling in his chest. His thoughts were a whirlwind, questions, doubts, and anger swirling in his mind. The future he had imagined with Olivia was now uncertain, slipping away like sand through his fingers. But amidst the confusion, one thing was clear. He couldn't go back. The betrayal was too deep, too raw. He could feel the sharp edges of the hurt cutting through him. He had loved Olivia with every part of him, and yet here she was, admitting her affair, justifying it as if it were a simple mistake. But the truth was far more complicated than that. He realized he wasn't just grieving the affair. He was mourning the loss of trust, of the life they had built together. As the evening wore on, Ryan wrestled with his emotions. His mind kept circling back to the photos, the note, the words Olivia had said. "I'm sorry." Those words didn't feel like enough. He had given her everything, and now he was left holding the shattered pieces of a marriage that no longer felt like his own. Ryan knew he couldn't stay in this toxic cycle. The truth had changed everything, and no amount of apologies could undo the damage. He was done pretending. He needed closure, but more importantly, he needed peace. It was time to let go, time to walk away. That night, as he lay in their bed, the weight of his decision settled on him like a heavy blanket. It felt final, definitive. He had made up his mind. He would leave. Not just for his own sanity, but for the future that was still ahead of him. A future where he would be free from the chains of betrayal. When Olivia returned, Ryan was ready. He didn't want to yell, didn't want to fight. He just needed to say the words and let it all go. When she walked through the door, her face was filled with hope. Hope that she could somehow fix the broken pieces. But Ryan knew there was nothing left to fix. "I've thought about this a lot, Olivia," Ryan began, his voice steady, but filled with emotion. "And I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay. You've made your choice, and so have I." Olivia's eyes widened, her face a mix of confusion and fear. "Ryan, no, please. We can work this out. No," Ryan interrupted, his tone firm. "It's too late for that. I deserve more than this. I deserve someone who doesn't hide things from me. Someone who respects me enough not to betray me. And I can't stay here and watch you continue to make excuses for what you've done." There was a long silence, and Olivia's face crumpled in shock, tears beginning to well up in her eyes. "I never meant to hurt you, Ryan. I love you. I always have." Ryan took a deep breath. "I know you loved me, but love isn't enough when trust is gone. You've broken something that can't be repaired." He walked toward the door, his heart heavy but resolute. "I'm leaving, and I need you to understand. This is for both of us. I can't keep living in a lie." As he walked out, closing the door behind him, Ryan felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was his to walk alone. For the first time in months, he felt like he could breathe again. The future was no longer clouded by the past. He had taken the first step toward rebuilding his life, one that didn't include Olivia's betrayal. It wouldn't be easy, but Ryan knew it was the right decision. The journey ahead would be his own, and he would take it one day at a time.